Over the past quarter of a century, over 2 million Peruvians have legally immigrated into the United States with hopes to follow the American dream. Our media team recently had the opportunity to sit down with CPA parent Mr. Roberto Vaccaro to discuss his immigration story, his family, and how both the Peruvian and American cultures have shaped him into the man he is today. Mr. Vaccaro, I really appreciate you being here today and sharing your story. Let's start from the beginning. Tell me about growing up and your background.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I grew up, actually, you can probably see it, I grew up in Peru. I was born in the town of Lima, and when I was 5 years old, we moved to Venezuela. Really, I grew up in Venezuela. That's where I went through elementary school, middle school, and high school. And then when I was 18 years old, after graduating from high school, I moved to the States. I got a scholarship to go to a school in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Thinking back to your childhood, are there any specific moments or memories that stand out?
One of the first memories that I have from Peru actually was we would have curfews, and there was a lot of military conflict at the time. Having said that, I really don't want people to get the wrong impression of Peru. That was, now a very long time ago, and the situation has changed, and actually Peru is a lovely place to go visit. I would encourage anybody that's interested in visiting to Peru to go there. I think another memory now from Venezuela, which is where I grew up, was it was a beautiful country. And I sometimes sit back here in Nashville and it almost feels like the Discovery Channel to a certain extent. We had pristine, beautiful beaches of the Caribbean, wonderful jungles. We had a farm in Venezuela where we would drive from our house to the farm. We had jungle in there where you would see monkeys, you would see macaws flying all over the place. And then we had a river at the farm and there were caimans in the rivers. So it was like all of these incredible wildlife that was there. Growing up in that environment was really a unique experience.
Speaking of growing up in South America, how is it like raising kids in America? Like, what are some differences that you saw?
One of the traditional examples you'd think about was the liberties that kids have and the freedom that kids have in the United States versus in South America. Things like driver's licenses, right? When I got my driver's license in Venezuela, you went to the driver's license place and there were two rooms, one room for people that paid and one room for people that didn't pay. And if you paid, you got your driver's license. And if you didn't pay, you didn't get your driver's license, right? So that type of environment creates, I think, a lot of lack of structure, which I think is a big challenge for teens growing up. So I think here you have a lot more structure, which I think is a really, really good thing. Being able to afford my kids the ability to grow up here, the ability to have this type of education was really, really important to me and something that I wouldn't trade for anything. I'm glad that we're here, and I'm glad that we're being able to raise our kids here in this country.
Now, I know you immigrated from Venezuela to the United States for college. Why did you decide to make the move?
In Venezuela, I was fortunate enough to go to an international school, and when I graduated from that school, the plan was for me to come to either the United States or England, actually, because my mother's English. At a bit of a decision point as to whether I was going to come to the United States as an immigrant or go to England and just kind of make my life in England. Lo and behold, I happened to get in the mail a few weeks after graduating that I had gotten accepted to a school in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They actually offered me a scholarship to go to school as well. My parents had always aspired for me to leave Venezuela or leave South America for my education. Venezuela, as you may know, has huge oil reserves and is one of the world's leading exporters of oil. But the Venezuelan economy took a massive hit from when we moved there in the late 70s to when I graduated in the early 90s. And my parents could no longer afford an education. So that's why the scholarship was really important for me to be able to come here. And here I am ever since.
So where did you go to college and what did you study?
I went to a school called Duquesne University. Ultimately, I graduated with a degree in political science and a minor in business law. And then after that, I went on to go to graduate school for an MBA in international management.
Tell me a little bit about your immigration process and becoming a United States citizen. What are some challenges and some joys of the journey?
When you get a visa as a student, you get a visa to study. By the time I was close to graduating. I decided, no, I really would like to stay here. It was at that point that you could apply to get 1 year extension where you could actually work. So I was given that permission to work for a year. Whilst that was occurring, obviously I got married to beautiful wife Jane. We all did our interviews because they did interview Jane, they did interview Thomas, and they did interview Caroline at the time. And then probably a few years later, they said congrats, and then we went to the LA Convention Center and got sworn in with thousands of other people. It was pretty crazy. I mean, it's kind of cool to see all these people of all different nationalities, right? All different shapes, colors, and everything coming to this country and wanting to make a life here. It's a true testament to this country that allows people to be a part of it.
Yeah, how long did it take?
Gosh, I knew you were going to ask me that question. And I'm going to say it was probably close to 10 years.
Tell me a little bit more about your family and how it was like blending two cultures.
Well, I think language is a key part of culture. When the kids were very young, I was really, really intentional about reading them books in Spanish and speaking to them in Spanish. Another part of culture is the foods and stuff like that. Obviously, we've all been to South America, we've all been to Peru. Them being immersed in I'm going to call it Peruvian culture has been really rewarding for me to see. Peru actually has the largest Chinatown outside of San Francisco is in Lima. So you get awesome fusion of Chinese and Latin food is kind of embedded in Peruvian cuisine. And then I think the third part of it is we were intentional to make sure that we served in Mexico. I felt exposing our kids to South American cultures as much as possible was really important so that they could see the differences. And really, ultimately, I think it was very impactful for them to realize how fortunate we are to live in this country. Having, reliable power as an example, right? And having, reliable roads, for example, is really, really something that you take for granted. And I think it's only when you experience some of those other situations and perhaps some of the less fortunate folks that you realize, wow, how blessed and how fortunate we are to live here.
How do you use your life experiences to give back to others who might be following the same path as you to become an American citizen?
We've actually recently started volunteering through church. We have a soccer program that we do, and you have kids from like 4 years old to teenagers that come, and we really just have a kind of a good time. We play soccer. Being South American, soccer is a little natural to me. We teach them about the word, and then we play a lot of soccer with them. And it's a good opportunity for me to speak Spanish with them. It's a great opportunity to kind of give back to the community and I think help people feel welcome.
Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great, and I hope that you do find a Peruvian restaurant somewhere around town and go and enjoy some great food. But thank you for having me, and it was my pleasure as well.